Welcome to the Realizations Podcast. I'm Andrea Gordon, your host, and I'm excited to explore the world of real estate with you. In a world where perceptions often overshadow reality, Realizations seeks to redefine what it means to be a realtor. Join me as we peel back the layers of the industry, uncovering inspiring stories and celebrating the good in real estate. Whether you're a homeowner, a fellow realtor, or simply curious, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Realizations, where perceptions meet reality. Let's dive right in. I am so excited to have today with us Kevin Patsel, who is the president of Northern California. Is that correct? That's the exact title?
They call it vice president, but I like the way you say it.
Okay, well, I'll say president or grand poobah of the universe of Compass. And I've known Kevin for a very, very long time. Kevin was someone who I would call up whenever I had questions about the South Bay, because we were both at Coldwell Banker way back when. But for today, I wanted you to talk initially about how you got into real estate, what led you to real estate, because it's always an unusual story, and what you do exactly today.
Okay, well, let me try to put this in a nice little chunk of consolidated time. But I actually look at my life right now in three portions, and they're all 20-year portions. So 20 years was my just growing up phase. I spent 20 years in public relations and marketing, and then I spent the last 20 years in real estate. So obviously the transition from kiddie life to adult life was normal, and I got into public relations via a trip to Capitol Hill, an internship actually, State Department, where I worked in their public programs department, which was a PR department. So that's kind of where I made the shift from my poli-sci major in college to public relations. Then I got into entertainment PR and worked with celebrities, or I didn't work with them. I was just like the low man on the totem pole. But in our agency, we had the Brat Pack and Molly Ringwald and Andrew McCarthy and the whole bit. So
oh, wow.
That's all coming full circle since it's the summer of Brat.
Yes. Yes, Kamala is Brat.
Kamala is Brat. So I worked my way through PR in a number of different functions and positions, and actually ended up being the general manager of Porter Novelli, which was an international PR firm during the height of the dot-com era in San Francisco, which was just such a fun time. But that bubble burst. And around 2000, 2001, and a couple of different roles and jobs, it was cut from a marketing perspective, first to go. So I actually had several jobs that I just hated. And so I just I'm done with this. And I got my license while I was in that transition period, because I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm not sure where my next move is. Let me get my license, as a lot of people do. Let me just get my real license, because it's so easy and glamorous, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I got my license and I just started selling, and I really didn't intend for this to be a career. I thought it'd be interesting, but I actually did quite well. I joined Coldwell Banker because the woman who sold us my house was there and I didn't know where else to go. So I started Coldwell Banker, and within 2 years I was asked to manage their flagship office in Marin, which was in Greenbrae. And that's how we got to know each other.
Right.
So I went back into management, which was I really knew well. And quite frankly, Andrea, I admire what you and the other agents do. It's such hard work. Me, it was so much pressure. Even though I did well and I put myself out there and I was wheeling and dealing, I just hated it, because I just felt like that I'm like a fake or a phony and I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh. So you had imposter syndrome, which is so crazy, because you were one of the smartest, most talented and capable people I know.
But whole new career, and didn't know what I was doing. But I ended up on they had like their Diamond Society or whatever. And I was looking around, I'm like, wait, I'm Diamond Society, and all the people that I've been following and admiring, they're like, I'm selling more than they are. Like, it was just kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
So they asked me to manage, and that felt really like the place where I needed to be. Although I will say that I've never had a more difficult job than managing real estate agents. I thought it was going to be a piece of cake.
They call it herding cats.
Absolutely. But it's just because it's not like working with agents is not like, okay, you need to do this and we need to get this done and let's work together. It's more about how can I help you? And I'm serving the agents. This is the other way around. And it was just different. And so I had to number one, learn the business. And thank God for people like Vicky Nadorf, who was such a good mentor for me just helping me understand real estate law and how to maneuver through a transaction. So,
And Vicky Nadorf was the chief legal counsel for Coldwell Banker, and now she works with another attorney,
Bill Jansen. I think, well,
she,
but I think now they're on their own. But anyway,
yeah,
and
she's
I
amazing.
know,
She knows everything about real estate law there is to know.
and I know a lot of people worked with Vicky, and I think Pacific Union and maybe even Juan Pinell, lots of different agents worked with Vicky. But I loved what she did was because she wouldn't let me ask a question unless I knew the answer, which is kind of a funny way to approach it. But it was very good because I would be afraid because she's also a very strong woman, right? So I'd be afraid to call her if I didn't know what I was talking about. And she would almost be like, "Oh, good boy, Kevin, you're like really thinking this through." So I think I might have been one of her pets, but sure taught me a lot. And then I got a little bit more comfortable answering the questions, understanding the flow of real estate and what you guys go through on a day-to-day basis. So I really started to enjoy that type of a role. And I've been doing that for about 20 years now until I came to Compass. I moved from Coldwell Banker to Vanguard Properties, which was a local brokerage and a wonderful brokerage. And I opened up their Marin operations.
I remember.
And I loved doing that. It was just like it was starting a new business. So it gave me that entrepreneurial spirit, but also with something I knew and loved. And so I did that, but then I got bored with that too, because it was very sleepy and there wasn't always a lot of people in the office, and it was Marin and I love Marin, but it was just quiet.
Yeah.
So when I had the opportunity to join Compass, it just seemed, oh, this is new, exciting, different. And I just saw that they were doing such different thing, or just approaching the business in such a different way. So it really seemed like, plus the job was in San Francisco. So it's kind of like opened up a whole new world to me. So that's how I got my start with Compass, and meeting with Robert and Gene Martinez, who was a good friend of mine. And then the original people, right? I came in, there was 100 agents, and I believe you were one of those agents. And they're about 17, 18.
I came in 2018, so I was in the next wave, but yes, there were very few agents when I first joined.
So we probably started around the same time, and then it exploded. We're like 4,000, 4,500 agents today. So I think what helped me just in my own career trajectory was just being at the right place at the right time, because I was here on the ground floor and I just happened to be the person that everybody came to. How do we do this? Or where do we go for this? And I knew more answers than anybody else. And of course, we made something.
You always know more answers than everybody else.
Andrea, we made a lot up because again, it was kind of, we were entrepreneurs moving fast into a new market, dealing with agents that had different needs coming from different brokerages. It was such an exciting time. Everybody was kind of like, you remember that? It was just like.
And culture creation.
Yeah.
I remember when I first met the very first time with Michael Schwartz, he was in one of those rented offices that you go to because there were no Compass offices.
Yeah.
And it felt very much like you were on the ground floor of something amazing, and the energy was palpable. The Robert that you're referring to is Robert Refkin, who started the whole company.
Yeah.
And he is a visionary, extremely charismatic. He's one of the most charismatic people I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
And he's so smart, and he's a kind human being. And he really has created from the top down a culture that is about being collegial, being collaborative, being connected. And I think he's really managed that beautifully and has picked incredible managers along the way who are all very useful. Every single time, I've been at a lot of different brokerages, and for a variety of reasons. I was with Century 21, then I moved over to the East Bay and was with Century 21. Then I was with Red Oak, then I was with Coldwell Banker, then I was with Red Oak again, then I was with Compass.
Not too dissimilar from many agents. They're, they hop around.
And because when you're an agent, you are actually an entrepreneur on your own, and you hang your license at whatever brokerage it is. And when you are at that brokerage, you are essentially that brokerage's client. And I have always felt like the manager was the very most important person for you to look at when you were going to a brokerage. It's not just about the tools. It's not just about the culture. In real estate, you come up on seriously difficult problems that really impact people's lives, people's financial lives. And it is incredibly important that you have a manager who's capable of answering hard questions and giving you the tools to successfully deal with your clients.
Yeah.
That's urgent. So managers are the most important person to me at a real estate office.
Yeah, and we really have some of the best. I remember back when I first started, though, Compasses was made up of a lot of people from different industries, and it wasn't coming out of real estate, which I think we've kind of like course corrected along the way. But I don't know that we would have had all of that interesting thinking and energy and different approaches if we didn't have those different minds coming in and looking at things from a different perspective, right? But it was a little frustrating for us on the real estate side because we're like, no, you can't do that. It's never been done. And lo and behold, like not everything came to pass or we were able to do, but some of the things that I was a naysayer, just didn't think would happen. Don't let me stand in your way, but I'll give you my perspective from what I know for being in the industry for 20 years. And that's what a lot of people did. So I think at the very beginning, it's like, what do we need sales managers for? Do we really even need them? I think that the times have changed, and I think that we understand the sales managers, along with our other support staff, are like the heart or the backbone of the support that we provide the agents. And that's also the community and the culture. It just kind of all works for some wonderful reason.
And let's talk a little bit about that. You've got a poster in back of you, and you can turn around and look at it now. I want you to read me the principles of that.
You want me to recite them like before?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I know dream big, because that is just the biggest. I know constantly collaborating with peers and agents, collaborate without ego is one. Learn from reality, because we learn by our mistakes, and we make many, but that's what helps us to grow, right?
Exactly.
So those are just my three good ones. Bounce back with passion, because when we make mistakes, we got to get back up and try again. That's 4. Optimize your strengths. Obsess about opportunity, which we all do, and nobody more than Robert Refkin. Solutions driven. I love that. And move fast, which we move fast.
Yeah. So when I first saw those principles, I realized that this was the company for me, because it's just so clear, and it is how I live my life. And so the fact that this company was stating that boldly and in a poster on the wall in the office when I first went in there, I loved it. I thought it was magnificent. And we're in such a complicated time right now. And I think that all of us as realtors and managers and people that work at real estate companies are trying to make sense out of the craziness that's going on out there in our marketplace with the NAR, DOJ lawsuits, with all of the other lawsuits that are happening across the country. And it's become incredibly complicated. It reminds me a little bit when the pandemic started and they were first trying to figure out how we could sell real estate, because it feels like we're walking on the moon again. Can you tell me a little bit about what Compass and you are doing to help realtors through this very crazy landscape that we're in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, I wanted to make a note on the entrepreneurial principles. Those weren't just drafted by some communications person. That was actually, I think they did a survey by staff and agents. And those are the principles that kind of bubbled up from the ground floor. So that's how people thought about Compass and thought those were our values, or the values that they believe Compass embodied. So it's really like Compass was already part of those entrepreneurial principles, and it just kind of solidified it. So I find relevance in anything that we're doing. So even if you look at those 7 principles for the stuff that we're going through today with NAR, bounce back with passion, we've got to. If you look at the pandemic, when we had to do the PED forms, which I don't even remember what that stands for, but I think it was how we show a house in cleanse, without spreading any COVID, and in the safest way, and not letting people in without authorization, all that kind of stuff. And people panicked. But did we not have the greatest 2 years of the industry immediately following that? So that everybody thought doom and gloom, how are we ever going to get through this? And we got through it. And not only did we get through it, we got through it with flying colors.
Right.
So we're a little skewed now because the market has shifted and changes. We're probably back on a more normal cycle. But now what we're dealing with is a settlement by the DOJ with NAR.
National Association of Realtors, by the way.
I mean, I love that you do that for me. But I think what's happening now is really what's happening is just there needs to be more transparency in the industry with how we get paid. And I really feel that this is incumbent on us anyway to be more forthcoming about all that we do for our clients, because people do think we just slap up a sign and drive away in a Mercedes and oh my God, you just sold it. But there's so much more to it, and I just don't think people realize it. Maybe they don't want to know, maybe they don't care. They just see us getting a big check and they think, oh my God, that's like, you guys don't deserve that. So I think the greatest thing that's coming out of this is that we're going to be having conversations and explaining exactly what we do for our sellers and for our buyers. And for the buyers who traditionally have not had to pay the commission, the sellers have been paying it, and then it gets wrapped into the price. It's just the way we've always done it. So it's there, the price is there in the total sales price, but now it's being decoupled and we have to be more transparent about how the buyer's agent gets paid and then how the seller's agent gets paid, right? Seller's agent, super easy. We're going to list your house. Here's our plan. Here's how we're going to do it. This is what you're going to pay us. I don't think there's any question about how
There's nothing ambivalent about that whatsoever.
Exactly. But in the past, the sellers have been saying, okay, I will offer the cooperating broker, the person that brings in the buyer, I'll offer them half of the commission, half of the 6% commission. So the listing agent will get 3% and the buyer's agent will get 3%. Well, now the buyer's agent has to fend for themselves, really. So in most parts, we will have a discussion with the sellers and we'll explain to them, these are your options. So we can not offer compensation. We can offer compensation. We can offer some kind of a concession. So there's all different kinds of options. And all that we have to go through and get in our heads and be able to do as professionals, as real estate professionals, is just be able to explain that. And it's just taking people it's a different way of working and we're not used to it. So I think some people are panicked, but the people that have been through the classes, that we're offering classes at the national level, at the state level, at the local level, CAR's offering classes, there is no shortage of resources for any real estate professional to understand what's going on and to get help. Now, fortunately, being as large as we are as Compass, we do have some other tools and resources that we're offering for our agents, websites where they can go and get questions answered. A broker in California who's just amazing, Kathy Maringer, our broker of record, who is teaching us and being very patient with all of the agents.
You and I have both known since Coldwell Banker.
But and the agents want to try to find a way to work around it, to say, well, what if we do this? And then if we do it this way, and then so they're trying to get back to the way that we did.
It's very, very hard. And the thing is, the contract itself states that agents are paid through the proceeds of the sale. There actually was never any ambivalence about the payment, honestly.
That's true.
And to me, there's a deep-seated disrespect of the professionals in our industry that comes along with this lawsuit, that there is actually a very clear indication that there are corporations out there like Zillow, just to name one, who would really love to disrupt real estate completely as we know it. They would like to have an end-to-end platform where they own the mortgage company, they own the title company, they own the real estate company. They offer an a la carte platform of services that are paid in little standard set fees, where a consumer goes online and never ever exits their platform. But the problem is they're taking out the fact that real estate is an incredibly complicated job. It's a relationship job. It is not something that you can just simply make something you point and click on a screen, because real estate is part of the senses. You touch it, you feel it, you smell it, you see it. You have to have somebody who understands the ramifications of all of that stuff. And AI is not to the point where it's going to be able to do that for you. But I think that's the end game goal of some of these lawsuits, to be frank.
Yeah.
And part of what the fact that the attorneys who are adjudicating this out in the world are paid a standard 40% professional fee. The irony of that is super profound to me. And the whole basis of this podcast was to have the listening public understand that real estate is a very fulfilling yet incredibly complicated job. And that it's not just a Vanna White standing there showing a house. It's not just a banker handing you a check or a title company seemingly doing nothing. The reality is that all of these jobs are incredibly complex and take a lot of intelligence and capability that we have not been given respect for. And, part of that is bad apples out there who aren't doing their jobs well and are not trained and don't have the benefit of the education and tools that we have. But a large part of it is these terrible reality shows that show people driving off and drinking champagne in their limos.
Well, that attracts people that want that lifestyle and
Right.
want an easy job.
Right.
I think if anything, all of the stuff that's going on right now will probably weed some of those people out of the business.
Absolutely.
That really aren't committed to helping their clients, understanding the mechanics of how to sell a home, understanding a home itself, the foundation, and all of the rules and regulations and the fire insurance and all of the things that we really need to know about when we're selling a house or helping somebody buy a house. That's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of knowledge and understanding and expertise. And I don't think that's something you can just pick up in a second. I don't want to discourage anybody from getting into the business, because I think it can be, like you said, it's been a very rewarding and fulfilling career for you. You're extremely good at what you do, but you've been doing it for a long time and you've learned along the way, right? Every transaction teaches you something different.
And also, it's just learning how to drive a car. You get your license and then you actually learn how to drive, because you don't have any real life situations to show you how that's learned. And you passed your test talking about fee simple and whatever.
I didn't know I took that test. I remember back when I took it, like there was none of it was even talked about or addressed or dealt with as part of the real world of what I was doing as a real estate agent. I was like, okay, this is different.
And for example, I took my test and I took my classes at a city college. I didn't take the one just online, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened, because my professor was a retired there were real life questions that came up. There were like 60 students in the class and everybody had ideas about this, that, and the other thing. And he was able to explain in a very cogent and coherent way for us what would occur if this happened and that happened. And when you just take it online, there's none of those what ifs. You just are trying to get the right answer.
Yeah.
So
I think I would have learned a lot more that way if I would have done it.
It was actually great. And then I had the really good fortune to get a broker that was amazing at my first office, Mohammed Ahmed. He was Palestinian and he was extremely right wing. And as you know, I'm extremely left wing. And so we would politically argue all the time. And I always felt like everything was very arbitrary, but he was always able to explain to me how the history of how things in real estate turned into what they are.
Yeah.
And why it is that the contract is the way that it is. And for me, getting that context was everything. So that's how I learn personally.
Well, and I go back to what Vicky taught me. She didn't really teach me real estate law, but really the kind of the underpinnings of how to work with the law and understand, how it applies to each different scenario. And then there's a lot of there's strategy involved in that too. And it's also, what are you willing to give up and what are you willing to fight for, which has a lot of legal implications too. So that just from a life standpoint, I learned a lot, and in real estate in general, just how the world works. And of course, everybody's buying or selling or renting or, has some interaction with property.
Exactly. And what's also funny is how you do life is how you do real estate.
True.
You'll figure that out over time as you are in this business, and you start realizing that you're meeting people when they get married, when they've had their first baby, when they're getting divorced, when someone's died, when they've inherited a property, when they've had a job change, when they've lost their job, when they've gotten a job. You're always meeting people at these amazing junctures in their lives. And so it makes you think about those junctures all the time, because we're there on the sidelines facilitating these ginormous changes that people have in their lives.
So true. And Andrea, if I could just say I really admire the way you practice real estate and how it fits within your life, because I think you've mastered how I would tell people to operate as a real estate professional, which is, what are your passions? What do you like to do, Andrea, as a person, not just as a real estate agent? And then that becomes also the sphere with which you work and interact and deal with people. So, you're into the arts and plays and all kinds of, you do everything, but you also meet people in those endeavors, in those passions, where you can naturally talk about real estate can be part of the conversation, and you do it in such an effortless way that it's part of you. So I think that's the way that makes real estate so fulfilling for so many people, because they do what they want to do. If you're an athlete, or I don't know, if you're into, what would you do?
Engineering.
Yeah. If those are interests that other people have interests in, and like-minded people connect, and you find your people, and it's easier to work with people when there's a level of trust or a level of camaraderie or mutual interest. And I think that's what makes this brokerage. It's a people business.
Exactly, which is why it's lunacy to think that you can take that out of it in any meaningful way.
Well, which so many people have tried, and that's why I think we have, people see how much a real estate agent makes and don't realize how that gets divvied up in a million different pieces. And I think so many people want a piece of that pie that they want to automate, or they want to offer you services to do this or that and make it easier, or try new technology. So it's like everybody's kind of grabbing for those consumer dollars, which I think is what's ended us up into the situation that we're currently in. Right?
Absolutely. And, I believe that we will come out of this much stronger. And for those of you that are not aware of exactly what's going on, the initial thing that's happening is that every buyer will have to have a buyer's agent, and that buyer and that broker will have to have that agent will have to have a buyer broker agreement between the two of them. And it spells out rather clearly what the buyer's duties are to the buyer's agent and what the buyer's agent's duties are to the buyer. And it also sets a commission rate, which I'm on a political mission to change it from commission to professional fee. I think it needs to be called a professional fee out in the world so that we can start garnering some respect as professionals.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know realtors are professionals, and at least in the state of California, and I think in every state they're in. We are fingerprinted. We are considered one of the professions, doctors, lawyers, and whomever else it is, that teachers. You have to have certain things in place in order to be one of the professions in the state of California. And the current environment disrespects that. So I want to make sure that we work towards changing that. And that's why I formed Realizations to begin with.
Well, and I think commissions also is so transactional. And it's so, it talks about like, okay, that's the sale, and then there's money exchange, and that's where you get your money. But it's so much before and so much after.
Oh,
And it's about the relationship, and it's about who doesn't have a question after they get the keys for their house about how do you turn on the lights, or how does this work, or whatever. It's just our job does not end.
it actually never ends when you think about it. I mean, I get emails constantly from people that I sold houses to 10 years ago asking me for references for roofers or for attorneys or for drainage people or whatever. It's important to know that it is a relationship business, and staying in contact with your relationships is very important for you as a real estate agent, but also just realizing that it's not just transactional. As Kevin has said, it's a lifelong commitment, really. So
It is. And here we are living our lifelong commitments.
I know. So how do you, as a person, deal with boundaries and being able to have a set, this is my job and this is my life? How does that work for Kevin Patsel?
Well, much like I talked about you and how they overlap an awful lot, the job and personal life, which is fine for me. I don't know. I think at first it was all consuming, and I would do, like, I just had to get a grasp on what was happening and how to really tackle the job or the profession. So I kind of gave it my all for a long time, and that wasn't a healthy thing. And then I learned, once I got over this hump, as I think most people do when they have a new job, it's like there's a certain ramp up time until you get to know it and understand it. Once I got over that hump, then it's so funny, when I first became a sales manager, people were in my office all the time asking me questions that I didn't know how to answer. So I feel like they were testing me. The second I started to know the answers, then the questions stopped coming. So I felt like the agents, they just want to know that they have the resource or have somebody that has their back. And then I feel like then they'll be respectful. I don't feel like people will call me in the middle of the night for something that isn't completely urgent. So I do feel like if somebody's calling me, they probably have a pretty good reason, and I don't mind picking up the phone or calling. But I do mind when people call me for stupid things, and it can wait until tomorrow. So, but I think people don't do that. So that's a good thing. So I feel like I have my free time, my space, and then I give it my all when I'm here. And that's how I separate the two. But, they do cross over. I have a lot of fun with the agents in our company.
We'll If you could say that last sentence that you just said again, it would really be helpful, because I thought that was beautiful.
I forgot what I said. What was it? What was it about?
You were talking about you were talking about setting boundaries and people not calling you for stupid reasons.
But I do think that it does mix. I mean, I love the people I work with, both the staff and the agents. So I could be out at night having lots of fun with those people. And is that work? Is it play? I don't know. But so that's where it kind of blends together. But it's a wonderful blending of work-life balance that I enjoy.
Well, you do a phenomenal job, and I'm so grateful that you're a part of my world. Thank you so much for coming to the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Realizations Podcast. I hope our conversation has shed light on the true essence of real estate and the people behind it. As we wrap up, I want to extend my gratitude to our listeners for their support and engagement. Your feedback drives the heart of this podcast, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to the Realizations Podcast and leaving a review. Your support helps us reach more listeners and spread our message of positivity in the real estate industry. Until next time, remember to keep an open mind, embrace empathy, and always seek the good in every situation. I'm Andrea Gordon, signing off from Realizations. See you next time.